Good evening and welcome once again. I'm Norbert Williams with you. Today is Tuesday, the 14th day of August 2018, and you're listening to Keeping It Real, where we keep it really real. 2 minutes after 8 o'clock, and on the other side of the console with me tonight in studio is Mr. Lionel Ellis. Good evening, Mr. Ellis.
All right, good evening. I notice you have me as your sidekick tonight because Champagne is not here.
Are you all right with that?
Well, I'll see what I can do, If I fall asleep, let me know. But nice to have you in the studio again, Norbert. And good evening to St. Lucia, visitors, and beyond the shores.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ellis. Number to call if you'd like to make a comment, ask a question, or just say something is 456-0931. 456-0931. And the email address, if you don't want anybody to hear your voice but want to still make a contribution, the email address is info@keepingitreal.lc. Okay. Mr. Ellis, you all set over there?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. No problem at all.
Well, good.
You know what my week was like, so, I'm just trying to get things back together here in the studio.
Well, good.
And I hear you have a hot show tonight.
Well, don't get burnt. I know there are lots of people lined up, listening and ready for the action. A little preview went out this afternoon. So, we're going to get into things. Anything in the news you want to bring up?
To be honest with you, I haven't had time for news this week. But I had... the only thing I can tell you is about Victoria Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And that pains me. It's really about the health system for our people in St. Lucia.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that we can, as a government, can get this health system cleared up, So many complaints about casualty, and that will take a whole program for me to explain what my experience was this week and continuing being in and out of the casualty ward and the emergency ward at Victoria.
Okay.
I can't wait for the government to do something and move out and get the OKEU hospital going. But that's another story. I'm sure you will deal with that in a subsequent program, right?
Okay, sure, absolutely. Okay, folks. Well, those of you who got the heads up on tonight's show know that a lot of what we're going to start off with pertains to former Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony, and of course, someone who apparently is, in my estimation, designated as his arch nemesis. In fact, for the St. Lucia Labour Party, the old Chandel Mall seems to be just what they need to relieve them of the pains and suffering that they constantly have to endure in his presence or at the mere mention of his name. Now, folks, you remember, I call you all folks, You folks, you remember when Neville Cenac, now Sir Neville Cenac, was appointed by this current administration to be the Governor General. The Wales, not Bob Marley and the Wailers, but the Wales, wailing and the gnashing of teeth that came from across the aisle was loud enough for all to hear. And, sadly, some people, too many people, don't ever get over themselves. They don't ever get over the past. It's strange that the very people who keep saying, man, that's the past, forget about that, it's the past, are the ones who, for some mysterious reason, have the worst adverse reactions to the past. And in this instance, the past as it refers to or relates to Sir Neville Cenac. It's very amusing to observe the selective application of that past, it's the past mantra that they've been pushing out for so long. Well, folks, which one do I hit on first? Since we're talking about that one and everybody's all excited about it, I might as well move ahead with that. You know, as an elected representative of the people, whether you're in government or whether you're in opposition, you're expected to do your job, you know, and that job is a job of representation. That's why you are the people's representative for a particular constituency. And the representation of your people occurs in the House and elsewhere, whether you're government or opposition. You have to speak on issues, you have to debate on them, you have to investigate, you have to inform your people on what's going on. Because you're not elected to be out of the house. Because if you're out of the house, you're out of touch. Imagine trying to pass a budget and you're not in the house. Imagine trying to pass a bill and nobody comes to the house. So there's an accepted place where the business of the people is conducted, and that is our House of Parliament. It's not by the market, it's not on Mikud Street, it's not anywhere else, but in the specific location designated for the official conduct of the people's business. And you know, sometimes I notice things without even looking, and I'm sure many of you do too, but you don't pay too much attention because it seems to be the usual thing, you know, whatever happens in life, you know, every day goes by and things happen, and you don't pay particular attention to the significance of certain happenings until, you know, at some point you get an aha moment, you know, that light bulb goes off in your head. Eureka! And in this instance, that light bulb has been going off for me for a few instances as it relates to Dr. Kenny Anthony. Yes, Dr. Kenny Anthony. That name is not taboo, is it? I mean, he's a public figure. He's an elected representative of the people. And therefore, his actions and inactions and whatever else he does is under scrutiny. He's in the public eye, just like everybody else. Whether you drive a Suzuki, whether you drive a Honda, and whether you drive a Range Rover, right? And I'm taking you to just a few instances in our House of Parliament where Dr. Kenny Anthony, for whatever reasons, has not been present. He's sent in excuses. But what really strikes me about all of this and comes to my reasoning is that when you're elected to office, your first priority is the business of the persons or the people from your constituency. In fact, everyone in your constituency who voted for you, and also those who did not vote for you. Hey, you know, hey, our representatives always say that they represent everyone, even though some people didn't vote for them. So you represent everyone in your constituency. And if you're late too often, or if you don't show up too often, and your excuse is other business, then you begin to be looked at by people as maybe not being too serious about the responsibilities and the obligations that you've taken up as their representative. And so Dr. Kenny Anthony has been absent on a number of occasions. In fact, when the roll is called at the beginning of every session, there is the moment when excuses or the reasons for members not being present are passed on to the Speaker of the House, or at least he acknowledges that he's received communications that certain members would not be present, whether they're traveling on official government business, whether they're sick at home, whether they are in court. But the thing about it that gets to me is that on rather significant issues or significant times, Dr. Kenny Anthony seems to be missing in action. You know, as a member of the public, you're entitled to query these instances. You know, if it happens a little too often for your liking, you begin to wonder. And particularly if you observe a pattern of these no-shows. I'd like to go just to the beginning of this week. We're not going to go into the other ones. But there has always been the perception that Dr. Kenny Anthony is very thin-skinned. Let's get real. You know, a lot of things fly about in the political sphere in St. Lucia. Certain people are considered this, certain people are considered that, certain people are... You get the drift. And Dr. Kenny Anthony has been assigned the persona of being very thin-skinned. And what I noticed this week is, in the aftermath or on the heels of the death of Mr. Asin James, former representative of Micoud South, at the joint sitting of Parliament exactly 1 week ago on the 7th of August, Dr. Kenny Anthony was not present. I don't care why he wasn't present. That's not the point. Point is that he was absent at a very significant sitting of the House. Being the fair person that I am, on Thursday, he did show up to pay his respects at the House of Parliament where the body lay in state. That was Friday morning. But again, strangely enough, at the funeral, he did not appear. Everybody and their auntie was at that funeral. I think there were thousands of people there. It was unbelievable. Even in the unbearable heat and in a church that was packed to capacity, people still endured the blazing heat, the blazing sunshine, and the heat therein to pay their respects to Mr. Asin James, who, by all accounts, was an extraordinary man in Deriso and an extraordinary representative. And we heard all the stories about his experiences and those who were taught by him and those who knew him better than I do, or than I do. And, you know, it's very curious that on the day before that, now remember, Dr. Kenny Anthony did not show up at the joint sitting of the House to pay respects to a former parliamentarian. On the Thursday, had been advertised for a while, just like sittings of the House are advertised to, are known by the parliamentarians. These things don't just pop up the morning or the evening before. The official commissioning of the solar farm by Lucelec in La Tournay, Vieux-Fort. And of course, Dr. Kenny Anthony was there. I mean, you don't feel for one moment that he would allow that moment to bask in the limelight once again. So it's very curious that there were a number of other individuals there, just as there were a number of other individuals, many people from different stakeholding entities. They were members of his party, his former administration, just as this current administration. But the strange thing is that Dr. Anthony was the first speaker at that ceremony. And what really caught my attention was, you know, it's laughable sometimes when you think back on what politicians have said and the demeanor and what they try to impart to their followers, to their supporters. And then you realize that, you know, too much or too often it's just playing to the emotions for political expediency or to score political points. And seated right up front there were a number of silver-haired gentlemen. Yeah, I'm not talking about Silver Fox. We're not going into the Shaolin here right now. Talking about modern-day gentlemen. Well, you all know, folks, that Bill Clinton was here for that opening. He addressed the crowd. And his foundation, the Bill Clinton Foundation, actually funded the solar farm. But what it takes me back to is statements that were made earlier this year when Sir Neville Cenac was appointed by the current administration as the new Governor General. And there was the hue and the cry and the wailing and gnashing of teeth because of the past. You know, the past, man. That's the past. But apparently the past has not been gotten over by the people who don't want you to bring up the past. So that's a very strange contradiction there, a convenient contradiction. Oh, they will not be anywhere with him. And you know what went on, what was said, you know. As a matter of fact, the opposition, St. Lucia Labour Party, was not present at our House of Parliament when Sir Neville Cenac was sworn in as Governor General. Nowhere to be found. Missing in action. Lost in space. Doodle, 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 doodle. The Twilight Zone. But the funny thing is, there at that official ceremony was the leader of the opposition, Philip J. Pierre, was Dr. Jimmy Fletcher, former Minister of Government, Dr. Kenny Anthony, and front and center, Sir Neville Cenac, the Governor General of St. Lucia. So I was curious because I was there. Yes, I was. I must confess. I was there. And I was saying to myself, but something must have happened. His skin must have foamed up a bit. Maybe he's using some astringent or whatever. Maybe Dettol to firm up his skin. Because he was there. And he was the first person to speak. And I'm telling you, I was rather concerned about the well-being of Dr. Anthony. Because, folks, you know, I pick up things. And, you know, you have to take this in context of what was said before, the persona that has been associated with Dr. Kenny Anthony, and what played out that afternoon there in La Tournay in Vieux Fort. And the thing is, it was all caught on camera and it was all caught on audio. And I just want you to listen to Dr. Kenny Anthony's speech. Well, parts of it. Some parts are irrelevant to the point that I'm making. But I just want you to listen to this, and I want you to pay particular attention to the beginning, where he has to acknowledge the presence, what people call the protocol. He has to acknowledge the protocol, and there was no way that he could have escaped it because he was the first speaker. So he had to, even if he wanted to, say, protocol having been established, he could not have done so because he had to establish the protocol as he was the first speaker. So I want you to listen to his intonation. I want you to listen to his breathing, because it's all caught on audio and it didn't escape me. And I'd like you to pay particular attention because this tape has not been edited, well, only to put parts together, but the voice on there, the breathing on there, and everything else on there is Dr. Kenny Anthony. Let's go to it.
Excellency, Sir Neville Cenac, Governor General of St. Lucia and Lady Cenac, President Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States of America, and delegation, Honorable Alan Chastney, Prime Minister, and Mrs. Chastney, members of the Cabinet of St. Lucia, Mr. Jose Maria Figueres, former President of Costa Rica, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, Leader of the Opposition, Permanent Secretaries, Deputy Permanent Secretaries, General Manager of Lucelec, staff and members of Lucelec, ladies and gentlemen.
Pause that there. Yeah, pause that there. Right. Folks, did you hear that? Dr. Kenny Anthony paused. He seemed to be having difficulty in mentioning the name of Sir Neville Cenac. He took a deep breath before. It's like he was trying to make up his mind whether he would say it. Then he got to Alan Chastney and another deep breath. Heavy, labored breathing. I'm concerned with someone who has thin skin, particularly in this case, the thin skin of Dr. Kenny Anthony. And I'm wondering whether he's getting heart palpitations, whether his blood pressure skyrockets, because there right in front of him is Sir Neville Cenac. Now, you know, let's go on, because there's more in that address which shocked so many people there. I mean, you could hear people gasping at the angle that Dr. Kenny Anthony was embarking upon with the statements that you just go straight through with all the statements. We continue.
Of Lucelec, ladies and gentlemen. However, as exciting and pleasing as today's achievement is, it would be remiss of me if I did not also use this occasion to reflect on some missed opportunities and to hope that we will soon see the restart and completion of other critical elements of the National Energy Transformation Program. It will be good to see the tabling in Parliament of the new suite of energy legislation that my former government initiated, which will create the environment for a truly modern and diversified energy sector. The decision to stop the CDB-funded island-wide LED streetlight retrofit should also be revisited, and this project restarted. These funds were being made available to the government at highly concessional terms, and the annual savings to government and relatively short payback period more than justified the investment. Unfortunately, the wind farm development was stopped over a simple issue. Where we should now have a 12 megawatt wind farm generating renewable energy into our national grid,
And listen to this.
with dividends for local shareholders and benefits for consumers, we have shrubs and snakes on undeveloped land.
Right. Right, folks. The official commissioning of a solar farm in Viewfort. Folks, the matter of being a parliamentarian or being a government representative or a representative of the people is that you're required, or it is required, that you have a certain level of tact, that you exercise a certain level of appropriateness. Be appropriate, be relevant for the occasion. And too often we find that those on the other side, for whatever particular reason, they've become very well known. Of course, you know the reason. We know the reason. The joke, it doesn't matter what it is. There always has to be a political joke. They have to juke you. They have to take every opportunity to dig your eyes out. And in the process, they make themselves look like, well, you fill in that blank. Might be a word beginning with J. They make themselves look ridiculous. They make people wonder what's going on between their two ears. You're telling me that to say thank you for funding the solar farm in Viewfort, it was necessary to bring up all of that other stuff? What relevance is that to Bill Clinton or to the occasion? That's local politics. It's not a political platform. But of course, to play it up, any opportunity to stick it to the government. It's time we get away from this foolishness. The people of St. Lucia are getting tired. I'm tired of that nonsense. Every opportunity to joke, to gourmet, to babier. I mean, come on. I mean, what is this all about? What did you achieve? Just a personal satisfaction that you were able to stick it to the government? Or in some misguided way embarrass them with international coverage? With all the press there? It's a feel-good thing before some of your peers. So they say, yeah, I'm the guy. Yeah, I'm going to give it to them. I'll show you who I am. No peace. We will fight you. We will fight you in the streets. We will fight you in the courts. We'll fight you at Latoni too. We'll fight you at the solar farm official opening too. I mean, when does it end? My gosh. I mean, are we going to grow up in St. Lucia? Are we going to get real? I mean, if you want to keep it real, get on this show and keep it real. Dang, damn it. You know, people of St. Lucia are tired. Your last, new last. Enough. Enough already. What do we have to say? A novena? To get some sense into the heads of some people? I mean, what has to be done? What? What? Kisa? You know, this is just becoming a ridiculous embarrassment. You know, people, fiddling, people don't know what to do with themselves there. This stuff that's being spewed out there on every occasion, every opportunity, every chance that people get. It's becoming a nuisance. This is not the type of behavior that we should be expecting from our elected representatives. But you know, with the analytical mind that I have, I like to keep it real, look at things objectively. Dr. Kenny Anthony is a member of Parliament at this time. He represents Viewfort South. Dr. Philip J. Pierre is the leader of the party, and he's the leader of the opposition. Now, let's be honest. It has been thrown out there that Philip J. Pierre, representative for Castries East, is the biggest acolyte of Dr. Kenny Anthony, because he was present during all the terms in office. He was there. He was deputy leader. He never opposed anything. So, in anyone's estimation, he supported it all because he never opposed anything. So, for all intents and purposes, Philip J. Pierre was a rubber stamp to Dr. Kenny Anthony. Well, say it ain't so, Mr. Philip J. Pierre. If it's not so, how about you saying so? What did you oppose? What did you clash over? Let's hear it. Ain't nothing wrong in doing that. We live in a democratic society and your organization is democratic, right? And you're allowed to express differences of opinion, aren't you? So, Philip J. Pierre is now the leader of the party. The reins of power have been passed on since June the 6th, 2016. But even with being an acolyte of Dr. Kenny Anthony, Philip J. Pierre showed up at the joint sitting of the House. I mean, say what you want about Philip J. Pierre. There are some things about Philip J. Pierre that let you know that he's a little different cut of cloth. He was present at the joint sitting of the House to pay respects to Mr. Asin James, the departed. He was also present at the commissioning of the solar farm, and he was also present at the funeral for the late Asin James in Deriso. Kenny Anthony was missing in action. But then, if you're transferring power and you want to be magnanimous, as you should be as a former leader, why didn't you let Philip J. Pierre, as leader of the opposition and as leader of your party, to address the crowd on behalf of the opposition and the former government? But you had to be there. You had to be the one. Now, anybody can say whatever they want and say he was the prime minister before, blah, 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 blah. Let's keep it real, okay? Let's keep it real. As a show of support for the leadership of Philip J. Pierre, you don't think he could have addressed the crowd instead? But you know, that's your own internal stuff. You all sort that out. It's just an observation of mine, folks. And I'm entitled to my observation. And I think it's reasonable. The conclusions that I've come to based on my observations are fairly reasonable. Don't you think so? Number to call, 456-0931. And if you'd like to email, the email address is info@keepingitreal.lc. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back in just a few minutes. Good evening and welcome back to Keeping It Real. Today is episode number 9. That's right, folks. 9 weeks since the start of Keeping It Real. And I'd like to say good evening to some of our listeners here. Woodbridge, Ontario, Canada. In Conyers, Georgia. Pierrot in Viewfort. In Brooklyn, New York. Gotten a few messages over here. Toronto and Oshawa in Ontario, Canada. We have quite a number of people listening online. Thank you very much. Last week we had someone in South Africa. Rosa Dominica just joined us here on Keeping It Real. And I think Mr. Ellis wants to say something. I'm seeing, hey, there's another one in Sefna, Florida. Whoever that is, good night to you, and thank you for tuning in to Keeping It Real. Mr. Ellis.
Okay, Robert. Well, first of all, I listened. I wasn't able to be at the Lucilec launch of the solar farm, but I had the opportunity to get the recordings, and I listened attentively, and I played them a few hours later. But it struck me that it seemed that Dr. Anthony was in severe pain as he began the introductions, the protocol list. And as soon as he got over that part.
Past that. That's what I didn't mention. As soon as he got past
over that part,
Alan Chastney and wife,
yeah,
he started smoothing off when he started talking about his former colleagues.
He was in serious pain. Yeah. I felt sorry for him.
You want to play that again, because mentioning this does not really bring it back. Just past the.
I'm going to give you the recording I got. I think it might be a little better than the one you got. Let's listen to my recording of Dr. Kenny Anthony and see what he says.
Excellency, Sir
that heavy
Manuel Neville Cenac, Governor General
Listen to this.
St. Lucia and Lady Cenac.
Yeah,
President Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States of America, and delegation, Honorable Alan Chastney, Prime Minister,
Listen.
and Mrs. Chastney, members of the Cabinet of St. Lucia,
and listen to
Mr. Jose Maria Figueres, former President of Costa Rica,
easy now.
He's gotten
past the rough
the
part.
opposition. Permanent secretaries,
Easy.
deputy permanent secretaries, general manager of Lucilec, staff and members of Lucilec.
We don't need to go for it.
And it's sorry that we had a lot of wind noise in that recording. There was a lot of wind noise, but it really struck me of that. And I was watching it on NTN, and I noticed that he was really if he could get away from But the point you made is interesting. One might say he's the parliamentarian for the Vieux-Fort South, and the farm is in Vieux-Fort South.
But all of that is true. I don't think that escapes anyone. But I think the opportunity to big up your guy, who is embroiled in public opinion as not really being the real leader.
The real leader, yeah.
Right. It's out there. Let's not pretend. It's out there. There's a lot of stuff going on. That was an ideal opportunity to big up your guy. Give it to him. He could say something, come on. This is a diplomacy. It's the whole thing. And I don't think if anybody wanted you to address the crowd, that you could not have deferred and something could not have been said. Come on.
And that wouldn't have taken any shine away from him, because he had met Bill Clinton before, President Bill Clinton, and he would have had the opportunity to speak to him there. But of course, to give the leader of the opposition, the present leader of the opposition, that opportunity, no way. You can't get past that at all, I tell you.
Like they say, things that make you go,
Mm-hmm.
Well, not Okay.
All right.
Right. So, going on to the news, folks, unfortunately, a person, whilst undergoing dialysis at the OKEU hospital, developed some complications, and as a result of those complications, passed away. It's the whole big hue and cry. Yeah, I don't know what it is that some of our politicians believe is in the heads of the people that they pass out so much of this nonsense to. But then, of course, on the news, almost immediately, was the representative, now from Viewfort North, who is the Shadow Minister for Health, I believe it is, Mr. Ellis? He's the Shadow Minister for Health?
Yeah,
Moses Jean-Baptiste.
Yep.
Another representative of the people. And he hops on having gone to the press or made a statement sometime in January this year, I believe, that if dialysis services were to be instituted at the OKEU without other services there, that there would be a problem. Now, from the get-go, that was a disingenuous or uninformed statement. And, of course, the usual hullabaloo and the press conference and the noise and the everything else you can imagine. They even threw the box at you, at the government, because someone died in dialysis. And oh, we had told you! We had told you it took so long for an ambulance to get there, and this person is dead and it should not be unless it's at a hospital. Folks, that is baloney! And it's not on a sandwich. So many. Immediately I heard that, I said to myself, it absolutely makes no sense. Because they would have you believe, Moses Jean-Baptiste, that unless you have emergency services immediately available on premises, that you cannot or should not have dialysis services. And that is absolutely false. Absolutely false. And anybody who knows anything or has been around knows it is false. And if you're just slightly observant, and we have cable TV in St. Lucia, and everybody complains about St. Lucia or the Caribbean or other countries in the world becoming so Americanized, because we see the music, we adopt that, we see the dances, we see the fashion, we see everything else that we adopt. But there's a lot of common sense on there that somehow eludes some people. And it is very well known, as a matter of fact, it's a fact, that many centers that offer dialysis services are not in a hospital. They're not near an emergency room. There are stand-alone facilities that you can go to simply to get dialysis. And what was being performed at the OKEU is nothing any different to what happens at a dialysis center in Martinique or in New York or anywhere else. Anywhere else. So where does this all of a sudden special conditions come into play for St. Lucia? And how you all were reckless and you're responsible for this person. It's very sad, folks. And I'm sure all of you will extend or agree with me in extending condolences to the family of the person who died. But not to minimize what happened to the individual, because death is not always a pleasant thing for people, for those left behind. But just like in any other medical care, whether at a hospital, whether at a center, whether at a dialysis facility, whether at a health center, people die from complications all the time. But lo and behold, after I had come to those conclusions myself, based on, my exposure, people are exposed to life, The rebuttal to the absolute nonsense that was spewed by the SLMDA. And you're left to wonder. The SLMDA, or at least the representatives, those who speak on behalf of the SLMDA, are doctors themselves. You would hope, or you would expect, that they're very well aware of what happens elsewhere. But, oh no, our special SLMDA had to come out and condemn. They had to come out and condemn. Basically the same line as what Moses Jean-Baptiste was saying. But folks, again, I'm just saying to you, is that the phone ringing? I'm hearing a phone ringing. That just like Moses Jean-Baptiste, they're basically saying the same thing, warning the current administration that this is what we're saying and you don't want to listen to our advice. All of this flies in the face of reality. The reality that dialysis centers or dialysis services are not only given in hospitals or in close proximity to an emergency room. But nevertheless, a Dr. Clark, medical doctor, who was at the OKEU and who is a long-standing doctor, had exactly this to say.
I disagree with the SLMDA's stance on this particular position. I disagree with the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association stance that the dialysis unit cannot stand alone. Because admittedly it was a sudden death, quote unquote. So the patient came into the unit and he did go into, without details being specific, cardiopulmonary arrest. And we did initiate CPR. We continued CPR for approximately an hour. And as I said, it doesn't matter where we had been. That is what we need to do. That is what you do in medicine. You try to bring the patient back. Once we thought the patient was stable enough, post-CPR, because we initially got him back, the patient was transferred. And that is what would have been done. Even if the patient had crashed 10 feet away from an emergency room, that is what you had to do, get a flat surface and start CPR. So I disagree completely with the notion that just because we don't have an emergency room, that this patient passed. That is false, categorically. It is false to think that the patient necessarily would have made it if he had been in an ER or if he had been at the old unit at VH. And I think that's just one of the notions that we need to dispel. Are there any statistics to indicate that standalone units have higher mortality rates than units which are attached to hospitals? The answer is no. There is absolutely not one study I have looked at which shows that you have higher mortality rates or higher rate of incidence at a standalone unit than you would at a unit which is attached to a hospital. So it is false, the idea that a dialysis unit cannot stand alone. But
yeah, folks, Jimmy Cliff says it very, very well. Very well. I'd just like to give you an opportunity to listen to a few words.
Hypocrite, you dirty hypocrite, you're gonna pay the price someday. Hypocrites, all of you hypocrites, you're gonna pay the price someday.
Words you speak from your mouth.
Words you speak from your mouth, but your heart is telling lies.
Words you speak from your mouth, but your heart is telling lies. That's Jimmy Cliff. You better watch out. Yes, folks, too many hypocrites, political bluffers. But a lot of what we have to deal with is dealt with in song, sometimes repetitively. Invader sang Victoria about the conditions at Victoria Hospital. Jimmy Cliff sang generally about hypocrites. There was another Calypsonian who sang about Teacher Percy say if you tell a lie, you go into hell as soon as you die. Remember that one? And we have to challenge our representatives to a much higher standard. As it stands, too many of them are getting away with absolute nonsense. And there are too many people who are just willing to swallow up the nonsense, swallow the Kool-Aid, drink it, open your mouth, and glug, 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 down your throat. Now, I want to go back a little bit again, because you see, we need to be a little more critical in our thinking in St. Lucia, okay? And the absence from the house on multiple occasions leaves one to wonder about the representation that the people of Vieux Fort South are getting from their representative. And then you're left to ask yourself whether the absences from the house are an indication or a reflection or emblematic of the state of Vieux Fort for 21 years. Whether this Pamele persona or this lack of representation on so many occasions is an indication of what that person really feels for the constituency. Because if you look at what happened down there, you're left to wonder whether he really cared about the people of Vieux Fort South. That's a logical question to ask, don't you think so? That's a logical question to ask. Let's keep it real, The number to call, 456-0931. 456-0931. And email, if you'd like to email us, is info@keepingitreal.lc. I see you paying attention to what's on your screen there and what's going on. What do you think about this, Mr. Ellis?
Well, it's amazing when you hear this. You see, a lot of the information that's given out by so-called representatives, like what is given to the medical association, if the people do not know what a dialysis center is and what it's supposed to do, they would believe what they're hearing. In St. Lucia, you have places like medical centers, clinics that take do different tests that are prescribed by doctors, and those facilities are outside the realms of a hospital. They're outsourced, more or less, results of blood tests for various ailments. Everything is not done in one location. But for the Medical and Dental Association to come out with something like this, they must be able to be correct and can be able to even present the facts that without an emergency center, and why has not that been said long before? For a lot of the people who go to these agencies and these their clinics or do certain tests in different places. There's one on Miko Street in Castries. There's one in the Gibbwoods Mall. There's several areas where people go and do certain tests and don't have a real emergency center to be able to do emergency operations and so on. Why haven't they come out before? Why are they coming out now with regards to the OKEU? Because they're moved.
They were working behind the scenes.
They're working behind the scenes.
Background. That's what was going on there. Hey, we have our
first caller. Whoa. Hello, good evening.
Thanks for calling, Keeping It Real. You're on the air.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
It's the first time listening to your program. And I'm just here listening to you guys and thinking how pathetic what I'm hearing is.
What is pathetic?
Because if I have to list the number of lies that the Prime Minister and your government ministers present to the public every day, it would probably take your entire show. I could start with the ignoration of your government. When your prime minister promised that he has a document on his desk, when he signs it, the price of gas is going to go down immediately. Where is the price? Where is it? Where is it? I could start with that. I could go on.
You serious?
Are you serious? Are you contributing something?
But I'm just showing how pathetic you are. You know? I mean...
I tell you. It takes all kinds. You're just speaking generally. Nevertheless, I think you know the area of Monjero very well. You would do great to deal with that area. You know what I'm saying? Monjero, Grosley. There's only one. Folks, if you're not coming to speak about something specific, don't come here and just call in and waste your top-up and just spew in generalized nonsense. If you want to address something specifically, and as a matter of fact, I mean, we've been on for an hour addressing specific issues. If you want to respond to that, respond to it. But don't just come out saying, you know, everything, you know, just shooting in the breeze, trying to make something stick. We're not operating like that around here. Okay? And if that's how you're going to call, then you're not really going to accomplish anything, because the few seconds that you were on there, you were all over the map. Maybe you're related to Christopher Columbus or something. I don't know, but, you know. Nevertheless, we're moving on. We're moving on. You know, I have no problem in you addressing specifically what I'm referring to and what I'm talking about. But when you come like that, your only intention is just to deflect and just to get down in a manger cochon. We're not getting down in any kind of manger cochon, because there's no fixed issue to discuss. You're just all over the place. So, moving right along. You know, in St. Lucia, we have been conditioned too much, and we have another call.
Yeah, another call coming in. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Ellis.
Hi, good night. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. I'm just laughing at this guy. It's a Taliban fella.
Well, I don't know. Maybe like we might be in Afghanistan or something.
Listen, finally he has found the frequency. I'm happy that, but he should pay more time to listen. He'd learn something or two.
Exactly. You know, because I've been listening ever since you all started.
You know, this is the type of interaction that too many people want to have. Just make noise. Just make noise.
Mr. Joro,
They-
Mr. Norbert, Joro.
they can't
That's
take
all
it. They
came
can't
us
take it.
for. That's all they came us for. Make trouble, you know?
You know, I've made it very clear on Keeping It Real and elsewhere that I'm not like that.
Yes. Look at how you gave the other gentleman an opportunity to say what he had to say.
That's right.
But he's asking to come on the show.
Yeah.
But if he's willing to be one-sided, you can't have him there.
Well, you know, we can deal with people like that
Okay.
because there's no space, there's no time for that type of tomfoolery.
Yes. I mean, really, after that, he almost, the same thing that happened to Kenny while he was addressing the gathering, that almost happened to me. Didn't hear how he was speaking?
Well, he was hyperventilating.
Yeah.
He was hyperventilating. But, you know, we'd like to thank you for tuning in if this is your first time listening to the show. Oh, it's not.
Ever since you started.
Okay,
Mr.
great.
Ellis, I'm the lady who said she liked Cicely and Inglewood Humperdinck and so on.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Yes,
I get a lot of compliments for my music, you know.
Yes. Oh, yesterday was wonderful.
And it's the same thing I spoke about some time ago, whereas there's several...
Sunday.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah. They just cannot take it. Some of them just cannot take it. They're in opposition and they're going to come to try to malign and get...
Yes.
We're not going to be responsible for the high blood pressure.
But Mr. Ellis and ma'am,
Places where they can go and talk their nonsense.
Oh,
Thursday nights they go there. When I hear them talking all the nonsense on Thursday night. You know, and they want to come there to disrupt and mess up our show.
well, we have no problem with people being in opposition, you know. They can stay there as long as they want.
Exactly. But
They can stay there very long.
Yes. You know, but they want to have the cake and eat it. You understand? If I'm supporting a party, they do good, I'm going to give them props. They
But
do
why is it?
bad, I'm going to criticize them.
But maybe you can give us an answer to something, not just us in the studio, but to our listeners out there. What would you attribute to the perception out there that one side of the political spectrum in St. Lucia is very reserved, is very accepting of whatever the situation is, and then there's another one that is enragé, they're aggressive, they feel that they are the anointed ones and they alone are qualified and capable of ruling St. Lucia. Where does this come from?
Because that's what their leader preached to them. Because all the leader preaches is violence.
Well,
So
we
they
have to be.
that aggressive way about them. You know, they follow from the top.
So you're saying that generally being aggressive or speaking in such a demeanor encourages that sort of personality.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't see how we on this side, how we are. We are humble.
Which side is that?
Our side.
Which side?
Your side and my side and Mr. Ellis's side. Yes, you know, we are humble people. We don't create problems.
No, we let them talk, but they can't let us talk.
That's the humble people.
Keep your magie for you. Keep your laugh.
We don't mind them coming in and having a reasonable debate, as Mr. Norman says.
But you see, listen. This is, I have always said so. There's nothing wrong at all. We live in a democratic country. There's nothing wrong in people supporting somebody else, and I'm sure every one of us out there listening right now. You see, when you don't know people or you have no connection to people, it's easy to allow yourself to demonize them. Because I'm sure we all have, whether you're on one side or the other side, have people you went to school with, have people who are your friends. And even though you have different opinions politically, you all can deal with each other respectfully, because you know what? I know you other than just through politics. I know you other than just who you support. So there is a bigger picture, and there's more respect, and there's more understanding for where people are coming from. But when you don't know people, it's easy to demonize them, to not care about how they feel, because you have no affinity for them, you have no connection. Upamele. And if people took the time to just accept that everybody else who has an opinion politically is just like their friends and their schoolmates who have an opinion about politics, people will deal with each other differently. But this encouraging of this kind of thing, as if it's wild animals, that kind of enragé.
The guy is missing his long distance calls, man. That's all.
Anyway, keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm an ardent listener.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you. It seems like we have a mature lady who's listening to.
No, but seriously
our
though,
show.
I mean, if the gentleman would at least call and say, "Well, listen, this is the first time I'm listening to your show. Who do you represent?" Something like that. But he went on a tangent. You can tell that he's he's missing something. He's missing something. Something that he had is lost, and he can't figure out how to get it back. So that's his contribution. We'll take a break now. Okay, and we're back with Mr. Norbert Williams on the program Keeping It Real.
Welcome back, folks. It's 11 minutes after 9 o'clock in St. Lucia. And thank you for tuning in, those of you in St. Lucia and those of you listening on the internet to our live stream. I'd like to say a special good night to you know who you are in Atlanta, Georgia, and our listeners in Ontario, Canada. Those of you in Florida. I see we have one listener in Dominica right now. Yes, folks, the wonders of modern technology allows us to see exactly where listeners are connecting from. And we have quite a few tagged on right now. Hopefully we can pay that bill, Mr. Ellis.
Yeah, just a little note here from the cost of that solar farm. Just to remind listeners, the solar farm cost like 20 million EC dollars, and
it cost. It wasn't
cost.
Loose Lake. Bill Clinton.
Well,
paid
that's
for
what
that,
they
eh?
said. No, that's what they said it costs. Right? Well, whoever paid for it, it's a $20 million project, and it's made up of 15,000 solar panels.
I would like to
stuff.
have a few of these for my house. Maybe
Yeah.
25 of those would be perfect. But you know, the thing is, I've been looking into solar for a while, and I think St. Lucians have been exposed to solar water heaters for a while now.
My home has solar water, and I tell you, it's a great savings. The money I spent for that solar water heater is well worth it, because it's amazing, and the water for all these years is still working like if it's new.
Right. But you know, the thing is, the price or the prices on solar hardware, the panels especially, have gone down significantly. The price today is about 2/3 of what it was 2-3 years ago. So the price is coming down significantly. The other components, the charge controller and everything else, is coming down as well. But one of the biggest costs in a solar system, aside from the panels, are the batteries. Because if you have a very cloudy day, or it rains for a few days, you need to have a charge
For storing.
for storing power.
Storing the power,
Yeah. And the batteries come to a significant part of the bill. And one of the things that you need to do in estimating the size of the solar unit that you're going to put in place is doing some basic calculations, or get somebody to do those for you, and seeing how much electricity or how much current you need. And that's going to assist you in seeing how many panels you need and how many batteries you need and how long you will be able to operate. Well, you're getting an interesting call there right now.
Interesting call coming all the way from Alberta, Canada.
Alberta, Canada
Yeah.
is calling on the other phone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to send us a ticket for a trip to Alberta. Not in the winter. In the summertime, it's better. Yes, folks. So the solar farm in Latony in Vieux-Fort is expected to, well, we've heard two figures. 1 point something percent of the 1 point something percent of the total output in St. Lucia, or some others say 5%. But I think it's a good step forward that all those concerned, whether it's the previous administration, whether it's the current administration, whether it's Lucelec, all in there, have together over time put St. Lucia on the right path. And of course, if we are to consider that climate change is as a result of our insatiable use of fossil fuels as oil, then renewable energy, solar being one of them, is a significant step in the right direction. And then we have the soon to begin exploration or experimenting with geothermal energy. So that's rather significant, and I think St. Lucia is well and truly poised to be a leader in the region, particularly with the attempts that we have made over the years with geothermal energy. And I think we've been way ahead of the curve for a very long time compared to other countries. And I can remember since if my memory serves me correctly, since the 70s, Mr. Ellis, we've been exploring the implementation of geothermal energy in St. Lucia. If these work out, if we can continue pushing with solar and our geothermal explorations become significant, I think what will eventually happen is that St. Lucia will become more competitive to international companies, and that would allow them to set up shop in St. Lucia, and they can experience more reasonable electricity rates, and that would also translate well for St. Lucians, who nobody will refuse a lower electricity bill. As a matter of fact, I just paid my bill today. It was, well, let's not talk about that. But if my bill could remain as low as that every month, then that would be great. That would be great. Mr. Ellis, what are you doing over there? What are you listening? He's listening to something. I don't know what it is.
I thought we'd be able to play a little bit of the comments made by President Bill Clinton for our listeners.
You want to do that?
I think that it would be worthwhile to listen to him for a few minutes and hear what he was saying to the audience. Now,
let's do that.
Okay, great.
Throughout the world. Why are they interested in financing me to help you? Because they know that we have a common future. And so, what I ask you to do is to think about what this really means. You've done something good, remarkable, worthy in its own right. You know that you can do more. The Caribbean still has about the highest electric rates in the world. You have to work things out that are fair to a utility that is clearly willing to help you and has been built on a certain set of assumptions, and the world has changed. It's now wind energy is economical, solar energy is economical. For all I know here, geothermal energy may be economical. But you've had to figure out how to get from here to there. You will have to do that together. And at the same time, as I have heard the Prime Minister say again today, you have to do it in a way that makes the island more resilient. Otherwise, all your gains can be lost in the blink of an eye. Maybe we'll get lucky this year. You deserve the luck after what the storms last year did to the Caribbean. Didn't do it to you, but what happened to Puerto Rico and St. Thomas, to Dominica, and to other places compromised your future too. We have to do this together. So I hope that today will be a day which we'll all be able to look back on with pride 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, because it was the beginning of something remarkable and enduring. I saw the Dominican Republic, where I spent a lot of time the last 18 years, starting an AIDS program and then helping with various economic initiatives. I saw them, I know it's a bigger country, but you can get the picture. They put up 90 megawatts of windmills and cut their power bills by 25%. And they did it working with the utility. In Panama, I've seen them put up 400 megawatts of wind power, and in the 6 months when the hydropower doesn't work, provide 40% of the power to Panama City in a way that cut the bills, not increased it. I have seen last year in your country, Mr. President, in Costa Rica, for the first time for more than 6 months, the entire country operated its full economy with no carbon emissions, zero. And the per capita income of Costa Rica, for a lot of reasons, is roughly twice that of the other countries in Central America. I say that not to brag on Costa Rica, but to say we have to raise the others to that level.
Yeah, that was a little excerpt from former U.S. President Bill Clinton as he spoke at the official commissioning of the solar farm in Tournay, Vieux-Fort, last week, Thursday. Also present was St. Lucia's Prime Minister, the Honorable Alan Chasney, and he said a few words as well with regard to sustainable energy and with regard to solar power and where St. Lucia is currently and where we're coming from and what the plans are and what St. Lucia has to do to become more power sustainable. Are we ready for St. Lucia's Prime Minister Alan Chasney and some of what he said last week?
We continue to act as if we are just one. And I want to take up President Clinton on what he started. Is that in order for us to be able to move forward and to solve this major crisis that we have, and clearly being here today is an effort on our part to be able to reduce emissions, to be more responsible citizens, and at the same time to economically make ourselves less dependent on fossil fuels. But climate change, or the environment, global warming, is having a devastating effect on us. And we're not going to resolve that problem by ourselves. This region has to unite. This region must come together with one singular voice in order to determine how we're going to move forward. The fact is that the odds are stacked up against us. The OECD continues to classify us as middle-income countries, and as a result of it, we don't have access to development funds. The protocols that most of the development agencies use reminds us every day that every project has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And because of the time they take to be able to disperse funds, it requires the cooperation of both governments. And so I want to acknowledge and again thank the former government for the work that they did in starting this initiative and continuing some of the ideas and philosophies that were already begun. But it cannot be achieved by one party or one ideology by itself. And if that applies in St. Lucia, it also applies on a regional basis. The debt, we're not going to solve the problem of the debt crisis by ourselves. It is going to require us come together collectively. How we vote on a collective basis at the UN and other international agencies says everything about our determination to succeed. So, as the lead Prime Minister for Sustainable Development, we have been working very closely with CARICOM and in particular the OECS about creating a common platform. Let us try to get that OECD can change how they classify us. Let us work on getting the protocols changed, but more importantly, that this is, global warming is something that we don't control. It's not within our destiny to be able to control. So even though we were to become 100% carbon neutral in our country, it's not going to change our destiny about global warming. So what it means is we have to adapt. And in adapting, we have to be able to take on investments that are critical to making that happen, but we have to do it within the constraints of what we are financially. And again, St. Lucia cannot resolve this problem by itself. It is going to take the collective effort of all of us to be able to make this thing work. And so we've been arguing with the World Bank and the IMF that loans that are going to be going towards resilience building, and in terms of raising the level of our bridges, broadening the breadth of our rivers, slope stabilization, putting utilities under the ground, building dedicated centers for disaster relief. None of those things are going to contribute to the economic growth of our country. None of them. But if we have to borrow the funds through the traditional resources, it's going to reduce our ability to put money into healthcare, reduce our ability to put money into education and into our basic infrastructures.
So, which means that we have to, with the limited resources that we have, maximize how we implement our projects, how we prioritize, and how we move forward into the future, especially with sustainable energy.
I hope you noticed that our Prime Minister acknowledged the work done by the former government.
Well, of course he did.
Right? That wouldn't go down so well if it was reversed.
Well, I've spent so much time, because sometimes you have to open people's eyes. You have to bring it to their attention what's going on, and indicate to them what you should not be paying attention to, or how not to allow yourself to be mama guide.
Yeah.
Because for you to understand what's happening to you, you must be able to identify it first.
But you see, the whole problem we have when we're going into a general election, Norbert, is the fact that you heard this stupidness, silly talk about SLP versus the Chasneys. And it's really sad when so-called prime ministers would say something like that. This is something that I thought was very serious and detriment to our political climate.
Let me tell you something. Let's keep it real. Okay? And the thing is that we have to hold our representatives, our politicians, to higher standards.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
We have to stop letting them get a free pass and pushing off all of this nonsense, perpetuating nonsense to the people. Our representatives have to realize that regardless of what they say, they have to be more responsible, because they will argue, oh, what I was saying was not, they didn't mean it literally, and it's just a figure of speech and all of that.
$100 million too, huh? Was not?
There are figures of speech that are harmless, and there are figures of speech that can cause people who on the brink, on the edge of sanity, of sensibility, those who latch on to the every word of politicians and take it and go with it and run with it, there'll be no peace. Sure, you can excuse it and say, well, but is there really that innocence in uttering those words? Is there really innocence? It's war over my dead body. Yeah, but could you not have said something else? Could you not have? As a representative of the people, is your English so limited that all too often the only references you can make revolve around violence? Why is that? Why? Why, St. Lucia? These are the questions, or this is the question we must ask. Why is it that for a particular set of people, every statement, or almost every statement, in whatever way, whatever words, they revolve around the use of force, the suggestion of violence, the inference of violence. Why? Why? That is the question. Why? Did you just have an aha moment there? Are you asking yourself the same question now? Say, you know, never thought about
To
that.
our vehicles.
Never thought about that. But it's peculiar. Once it's been brought to your attention, you begin to notice it. And I would ask you now, from this day on, to pay attention to what is being said. Pay attention. Because once it's brought to your attention, you never notice that once somebody brings a new song to your attention, all of a sudden you're hearing it all the time. You weren't paying any attention to it before. You weren't opened up to it. Or you come across a new word, look up the definition, and then all of a sudden you keep hearing it. It's because your eyes have been, your consciousness has been opened up to it. You see somebody or you meet someone you never met before, and then all of a sudden you see them every day. The same person you've been passing all along, but you've never, your consciousness has not been opened to that person.
But politicians must understand that they don't have any God-given right to any position. And that is what I found strange. That is what I found funny. Because when you hear, for example, this caller, the caller a few minutes ago, who obviously is a follower of the St. Lucia Labour Party.
Well, not necessarily, but he's opposed to the government.
I know the voice. I'm not going to keep it real. Keep it real now, but I know who you are.
Well, hold on. Well, I'm keeping it. I'm not a gade.
Okay.
So I can't see, but maybe you know the voice.
I seem to be associating myself too much with champagne, man.
But by the way, I sent him the link to the show.
So
this
he must
afternoon.
be listening in Cuba?
Oh, hopefully, it's not as easy as it is here in St. Lucia to get on the internet. It's costly, and that's just the state of things over there at this time. There is internet access available finally, but the cost is a little prohibitive. And the speeds are a little slow. So when you get it, and that's it. Yeah. And Wi-Fi access all over the place is not as easy as it is in St. Lucia.
It's not so far. It's just wide.
Yeah, it's wide.
No, but this is serious because, you know, in today's technology and everybody has the modern technology with them, I think politicians must realize that St. Lucia and people of the Caribbean are not as stupid as they believe. And when they get a mic in front of them and they start to utter nonsense, you know, there's nowhere what will happen. You'll just pay the price. It happened in Barbados, it happened in St. Lucia, and it happened elsewhere in the Caribbean. And the brightest politicians, or the people we feel that are the brightest, the people some of us feel are the brightest, are the dumbest.
You'd be surprised sometimes you as a regular guy deduce things and you see things and what's going to come out of a particular course of action. And you're more correct than the people who supposed to know.
And what make it was they come up with such arrogance. Oh, if they think, I will say it again. It's going to be the SLP versus the Chasnays. But they don't forget. They don't understand that what they actually saying tomorrow it will be the SLP versus the Joneses or the Josephs or the this or the that. Why not keep it clean? When will it end?
Yeah.
So this is what we have to talk about. And they pay the price and they're still not learning. They get in front of a microphone as soon as the microphone get in front of them and they talk other nonsense.
But you know that brings to mind another issue which came up recently in the House that had me thinking, and it's happened on more than one occasion. And the last issue in the House with the Speaker and statements which were made, we all know the story. And if you recall, that I think we're in a position now, because technology and the internet and modern day ways of doing things have changed a lot how we do things and have introduced a new set of issues or problems. And I'm talking specifically about the House. The expectation of the public is that they are allowed to hear live the proceedings in the House. And I contend that that is not so. Because a member of parliament who is on his feet in the House speaks to the chair or speaks to any other member through the speaker. And you cannot speak directly to the people. The official record of what has transpired in the House is in Hansard. And for those of you who don't know, Hansard is the record. It's named after the person who started those records in the House of Parliament. Hansard. See, that's all this Hansard you keep hearing about. It's the record. It's the official record. But we have a little quandary now, which is becoming a problem, because the official record is Hansard in the House. But because of modern technology, because of the internet, even though an item or a statement is struck off the record or not allowed to be recorded in Hansard, that means nothing anymore, because it's forever saved on the internet. Because even if it is struck off the record, NTN or GIS has the live feed on Facebook, and that is on there. So is that not a record? And now here's where I want to go to. The immunity that is afforded or accorded members of parliament in the House, because we all know they say whatever they want and nothing can, they have immunity. That's why we hear some of them challenge people. Say that outside. Let's go outside and say that. Right? But is not the official record of the House outside immediately? Aren't the statements which are privileged in the House also being made outside the House because they're carried live? So what situation are we in there? You have an official privileged position, but inadvertently you have a public statement of what's going on in the House live.
So if you struck it off the record in the House, it's already outside.
It's still out there. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Kenny Anthony, but it's strange that I've only heard this on that side. And if anybody has heard it anywhere else, they're free to say so. Dr. Ernest Hilaire, Dr. Kenny Anthony, and Philip J. Pierre, and Moses Jean-Baptiste. They've all made statements, and when challenged to withdraw those statements, they've said, well, okay, I withdraw it, but I say it already. And in particular, let me bring it up because I've been the subject of one of those, right? And I really don't understand, and this is the first time that I'm bringing it up publicly. I really don't understand what the need for saying so was, because the only conclusion I can come to for Dr. Ernest Hilaire making those statements is for public sympathy. And he came up in the House and said, Mr. Speaker, I think I'm going to need police protection, or words to that effect. It's out there. He said it. It's on the internet. That Norbert Williams was seen sneaking around my vehicle in the dock and taking pictures. Now, everybody knows that I've been walking around with a camera for years. It's my big-time hobby, long time. And pictures of all types of occasions and events have come from me. And people have seen that. I've been known for that. And rather peculiar to make a statement like that. Dr. Ernest Ile is an elected representative and he's a public figure. But he's the one who attracted attention to himself by making certain statements in the press. So that's all well and good. But I find it rather peculiar that when he was challenged on that, I can't mention people's names who can't defend themselves in Parliament. What was his statement? I withdraw my statement, but the Prime Minister's attaché, the one with the bow tie. I take back my statement, but I said it already. So is that a strategy now to use the immunity of the House to make a statement, to withdraw it, but then knowing full well that with modern technology or with the internet that we have now, that the live broadcast has already put out what you wanted to put out. And now even though you withdraw it, it's already out there. So what does striking it off the record afford you? And are we to see those statements now being made, and with comments like that, as an abuse of the privileges of the House? What protection does a person in public life have from an individual making a statement in the House, having it struck off the record, but because of the live broadcast, having it in the public domain where it should not be? Right. That is the peculiar question.
I think what you're doing here is probably calling the House to look at a properly engineered delayed system. And normally delayed system in broadcast stations are somewhere around 10 to 15 seconds, maybe 20 to 25 seconds. But in the case of the House, you'd have to have a delay something like about 15 to 20 minutes.
Exactly, because if somebody brings up something later on, say, hey, well, you said this. Oh, yes, I withdraw that. This leads to now. Hold on a second here now. Hold on a second here now. Because I've been bombarded with this, and I think I have a right, since I was a victim of the privileged public statement, right? The withdrawn privilege, but inadvertent public statement. And yes, I did take pictures of the vehicle in question. I absolutely did. Never denied that. On that night, I also took pictures of a number of other vehicles there. I'll not get into the intricacies of photography for those who are not into it. That's irrelevant at this time. But the vehicle was parked. I was supposedly sneaking around the vehicle in the dock. And the tremendous concern was whether he needed police protection. Because somebody's taking a photo of your vehicle. Stop being a drama queen. Right? In the dock. But the vehicle was parked near the House of Assembly by the William Peter Boulevard, one of the brightest places in the city of Castries.
And you didn't take a picture there?
But I did. But I don't know where the dock came from. surprisingly, the location was not mentioned, and it gives people the impression that it may have been around his house or somewhere. You know? But that is the deceptiveness that we see from people. But so enough for that. That's a waste of time. That's just a mama guy. That's just a distraction. That's just an attempt to get sympathy for people from people. That's just a distraction from the real issues. So moving right along and quickly. Mercury Fest last weekend. I heard you ordered a thong from Amazon and it didn't come in time.
Sorry, it came, but wrong color.
Oh, the neon green. I thought that's what the color you want. The neon green, right? Okay. But folks, that's people sending me messages here. Well, we have surprisingly, looking at the number of persons tuned in here now online, we have 2 more from Rosso Dominica. I wonder if it's the penguins listening to me. Good evening to you out there in Dominica. Nice to have you joining us. Hope things are coming along nicely in Dominica in the aftermath of all what went on down there. We know that there's still a long way to go in Dominica, but y'all are moving forward slowly but steadily. Yes, folks, number 4560931, and if you'd like to email us, the email address is info@keepingitreal.lc. So, what's coming up next? The next is Food and Rum, is it? Food and Rum. Folks, if you went to Mercury Fest, hey, give us a call. Somebody out there. I know there's somebody out there listening who went to Mercury Fest. I heard from a lot of people who said they were going, who were there. I saw pictures. But let us know about what you thought of the new Mercury Fest as it compares to the old Mercury Beach. From what I've heard, it was just as good. There's a lot of traffic up on that road there. At Friday, I heard Grosley was banging. Was absolutely something else. But Friday night, I just couldn't make it out there to see what was going on. But I think Grosley's really picked up on Friday night, and Saturday night it was really something else out there at Pigeon Island. Didn't hear anything happening over there with the police. But ladies and gentlemen, folks, I think we really have to give kudos to the police, especially during the carnival season and the final 2 days, the Parade of the Bands, and at Mercury Fest and a number of other public events. The police have definitely stepped up their game. The police have been working hard. We know that for sure. And you could say all what you want. There are some really good police officers who work really hard. We know the traffic department has been doing a wonderful job out on our streets, on the roads, and they've been preempting a lot of what could go wrong by taking action and stopping a lot of illegal activity. The police have been doing wonders patrolling, particularly at these events, and we must say, job well done to our police. We know they're under a lot of pressure, as the police always are, and sometimes or too often it's a few bad apples that spoil things for everyone else. And I don't think the police department is any different. You know, it's easy for us to be prejudiced. It's easy for us to be prejudiced at a group just based on a few incidents. You know, that happens with people of color, black people. It happens, you know, with all sorts of in all sorts of instances. But the government is moving forward and supporting the police. We don't have all the money to throw at any one institution or organization in St. Lucia in one go, but the government continues to show its commitment to the police and to the enforcement of law and order in St. Lucia. And our police have received a number of new motorcycles for the patrols on the highways and byways of St. Lucia. And they look nice. I used to ride a long time ago, but I'm not into motorcycles anymore. But, you know, I wouldn't mind a ride once in a while. Not with handcuffs on, but I guess that's a far stretch. Good evening to Woodbridge, Ontario, Canada. We have a listener from there. They've been listening for over an hour now. So that's good. Our reach is getting far and wide, you know, Mr. Ellis.
Yeah, we're working desperately on that with our new link.
Our new stream setup. That's right. The quality is much higher. It's 3 times better than what it was before. So the quality of what you're hearing on if you have headphones or if you have a nice set of speakers on your computer, we should be coming in nice and crisp.
Yeah, we're still working on our phone lines. We have to get some filters to knock out some of those buzzing sounds and hums. But this thing takes time.
Yeah, so we're now at 5 minutes before 10, and how time flies so quickly. And we take a short break.
Yes.
And we'll be right back to wrap things up.
We'll be back in just a moment.